ARPA starting now. Well, I think that it's 2:03. We'll give Arthur another minute or two, and then we can start. At the very least, we can start with the updates. We can start updating everybody on where we are with the current grants before we move on to some of the discussion for round two. I hope you all had a chance to look at the dates, because one of the things I really hope to do was to try to nail down our calendar so that it'd be a little easier for us in the winter/spring. That's all. Jenny, did you hear the conversation? Everyone's going to get hoodies at the end of this.
I love it. Sounds good.
They're going to say, show me
much
the
better
money.
than a baseball cap. Thank you.
Yes.
I'll still take a baseball cap.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. I'm not joking. You know that, right? You can't joke with me. Somebody on my team made a joke about putting the pets. My team's called the IRA team, the Institutional Anti-Racism and Accountability Project. Somebody made a joke about putting the pets on the donate page that said the pets of IRA, thank you. I will tell you all, when you go to our donate page, there is now a whole line at the bottom that say the pets of IRA, thank you, with all of our pets there. All right, let's see.
Love it.
So I don't know where Arthur is. What I'm going to do is call him, but Tyler, I'm going to turn it over to you to get things started with the updates on the current ARPA grants.
All right. So we finally got these MOUs out. So they've been slowly trickling out. We've been getting a lot of these signed, and I'm actually going to reach out after this meeting to confirm. I think we've already sent 2 payments out. So that's very exciting. And I think we might be able to put a few more in next week's batch. For any other subrecipients that are watching, I haven't received an agreement yet. We're still just finalizing a few details of those, but those should be out by next week. So early next week, of course, because Thanksgiving. As far as the premium pay, I will toss that over to Melissa. Unless there's anything else I missed.
I'm just going to follow up with that, Tyler, as quickly as that. Now that the MOUs are mostly out, any of the recipients will be receiving a lovely email from Mike and I, which I've yet to draft, or Mike and I have yet to draft, really emphasizing, because we cannot emphasize it enough, the importance of thinking about diversity and equity in your granting process. So we just want to really formalize that, something that's really important to this committee. And so you'll be seeing that follow-up email from us.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
In terms of an update on premium pay, we have engaged with department heads with the current rosters that we have for people that we believe are eligible. They have marked up to indicate kind of what level they are of participation in terms of how much of their work was spent at the job site versus how much was remote, and then that will inform the calculations around premium pay. Now we're just kind of doubling back with the department heads on questions that we might have about the way the roster's been marked up, but we're hoping to have that kind of squared away within the next couple of weeks. We are still working with the school department to get their information. We reached out to them, and we'll send them a reminder that we're still looking for their eligibility as well, kind of in the same manner that we've done it on the town side.
Great, thank you. Does anybody have any questions about where we are currently? All right, great. I will say it was I'm happy for all the grantees, but I was extremely happy yesterday to sign the MOU for the Brookline Community Mental Health Foundation. Really thumbs up for that one. All right. So what I'd like to do is go to that lovely Google Doc, if you don't mind. And for those who are the participants who can't see the Google Doc, no fear. I will actually be reading out loud what is in there, so you'll be able to hear it. And actually, now that I'm running this meeting, I'm going to ask Chaz, do you mind giving, do you mind giving Arthur a quick call and see if you can join us? Because I'm going to start going through this. Thank
Sure.
you. Thank you. All right, so we have settled on the opening and closing days for the grant. So Tyler, are these on the website? The opening day will be, oh good, yes, and they are on the website. So for those who are listening, and just to make sure everyone on this committee knows, opening day will be January 3rd, 2023. Now, folks will be able to prepare, thank you, Melissa. So folks will be able to prepare their grants ahead of time. When I say opening day, that means the portal will open for submission starting January 3rd, 2023. And we will be closing for submission February 7th, 2023. And the reason we're doing this is so that we have enough time as a committee to review the grants and make decisions with a little bit more buffer than last time around. And we decided not to do rolling because it just makes it too difficult for us to really determine since we have a fixed sum of money. And we have potential ARPA review committee dates. So I'm going to go over those real quick with everybody. And please tell me if you have a problem with one of the dates. Our first meeting will be February 17th. The goal for that meeting will be to take the grants and assignment subject matter, our subject matter areas of expertise for the committee. At that time, we'll also review the process, the spreadsheet, and the timeline. And then we'll ask you to come back at the next meeting with kind of your top 10, like last time. And if it's 11 or 8, you know, but you're really, you're the top of what it is that you think is worth us continuing to discuss. Not worth us to, you know what I mean, that we should be further evaluating for funding. The next meeting is March 3rd. We'll do first round eliminations discussion and really try to keep it to the top 10 of each, and maybe start thinking about reducing it to the top 4 to 7. Meeting number 3 will be March 17th. And we'll start talking about which organizations will be invited for interviews based on the criteria I have outlined below, which is all up for discussion right now. So if you have edits to those criteria, let me go through the whole thing and then you can just take notes, come back and let me know and we can discuss it. But right now is the committee has, if we as a committee have questions about the grant that has been submitted or about the organization, if we have suggestions for the grant or the organization that we want to relay, or if we need to determine whether that organization would be amenable to partial funding. Of course, I would say there's a caveat there that if there's some other reason that comes up that we want to interview a grantee or an organization, I would leave that to the discretion of us. So if Jenny says, I know these don't meet all these criteria, but I really want to talk to them about this other thing, we're going to say, yeah, sounds great. And then as I think later on, we'll discuss how we want to format those interviews. But then we will actually invite folks to interview with us on March 24th. And then we'll have our listening session, public hearing on March 31st. And then we'll have our meeting on April 7th to finalize the list based on the public hearing and based on the interviews, and then hopefully have our final vote. Yes, Brian.
The 7th of April is a no school day, which could be an issue for me. I don't know right now.
Okay. That's a good, I'd rather if it's potentially an issue for you, let's see how easy we can, would the Thursday, April 6th work for everybody if we needed to move this to April 6th? And if so, what time? Hi, Arthur. You're on mute.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about that.
That's
Can't
all
get-
right.
Go ahead.
You missed the updates from where we are. We can give those to you separately after. And we were just going over the schedule
Right.
and what would happen at each meeting. Great. What's the word for everyone on Thursday, April 6th? Let's start with Melissa and Tyler since they have to be there.
That works for me. I'm not scheduled out that far, so.
And then Jenny, I see your hand is up. Melissa, will that
That should work. I have a department heads meeting in the morning, but it should work.
And Jenny?
Yeah, if it's at like 3 though, not 2, would be better for me personally on the 6th. The only one other date that may not work for me in the afternoon is the 3rd.
Okay,
That's before a spring break, but not like school, like a college spring break. So if we could meet in the morning on that day, that might be better for me than
hang on
2.
1 second. Tell me that in 1 second. Oops, I'm just, does April 6th at 3 p.m. work for Brian? That works for you?
It
Mike?
does. And I just want to be clear, the 7th could work. I don't know yet.
I know, but why risk it?
Yeah, okay.
Mike, works for you? or-
The 3 o'clock is good, 2 o'clock would not be, so Jenny and I.
Okay.
are both.
And Arthur, you?
Yeah, it'll work for me.
Great. So the April 7th meeting will now be April 6th at 3 p.m. And Jenny, tell me again, what was the date that the other
The
one?
3rd, if we could do instead of 2 o'clock, like 11 o'clock or something to that effect,
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
March 3rd.
Yes.
All right, let's see. Let me, everybody take a look at your calendar. Well, my schedule is remarkably empty. I've never seen that. There's absolutely nothing on March 3rd. Something must be wrong. So 11 a.m. is what you're asking for? How does that work for everybody else? Thumbs up, thumbs up. Mike?
Okay, just 1 sec here. I just gotta.
Yep.
Gonna go back a month. March 3rd is fine, wide open.
All right. Arthur, good for you?
Fine.
All right, great. Any other dates or times that we need to modify? All right, yay. Okay, good. I'm really glad that to me, I just think this is a better, we can look ahead. Obviously things happen, life happens. We'll have to deal with that. If we have to make a last minute change, we have to make a last minute change. That's just the way it is. All right. So now what I would really love is a little input on, you have in front of you, we can just start with the criteria for inviting organizations to interview. Again, with the caveat that we can invite whoever, but are those adequate for everyone? Brian, go ahead.
So I guess this is maybe a bigger question or point. I'd like to talk about scoring as well as interviewing. I guess I felt a little uncomfortable last time having to make a call on how diverse-ish or community helpy things were. And I guess I'd rather have the organization tell us how diverse they think they are and how community-based they think they are and why. And take a little bit of the subjectiveness out of it. Especially when it comes to infrastructure projects, it's really difficult to sort of say how much it will help, the sort of folks we're trying to help. So yeah, that's all.
So I think I saw Jenny kind of nod in agreement. Did I catch that? Yes. And I actually think that's a fairly easy fix. Because I think we can actually just ask that question.
Yeah.
Ask them to answer those 2 questions in the grant proposal.
Yeah, I think so too. And so, and then in the scoring criteria, instead of, does the organization have a community-based focus, it could be something like, how much is the thing community focused or something like that.
Yep. Okay.
And again, I just, as a cis white Irish Catholic male from Boston who's incredibly privileged, I don't feel comfortable sometimes making these judgments because I don't know what it's like.
All right, I think this is, I think that's, I can figure out the wording. I don't know exactly what it would be, but I think we can add the question to the grant and then change question 1, you know, to scale that somehow, depending on their response. Does that seem like I'm addressing your concern?
Thank you.
Okay, great. So that's what Brian just did is great. If you all want to just look at I can run through the questions really quickly, because I also want the participants who are joining us today to be able to hear some of these, even though I'm not going to share the document with them. It's just too complicated. So the first question that Brian was talking about was, does the organization have a community-based mission or purpose? And I think we'll figure out some other way to score that based on how they answer that question themselves. And maybe that goes for question 2 as well, right? Does the organization primarily serve low-income BIPOC people at or below 30% of the median area income, or are those disproportionately impacted by COVID? Yes, thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
And the third question is, does the organization have the financial capacity to carry out the organizational financial capacity? Did the organization receive round 1 funding? And this is more internal, but if no, was there communication that they would be reevaluated in round 2? Because there was certainly some conversations that we said, you're not ready yet, come back for round 2. And if yes, then we'll ask them a little bit about what's happened with their current funding. And then, does the proposal demonstrate engagement, input, and buy-in from the target population? Does the proposal meet an identified need based on the community input? Does the proposal serve the population we're interested in? Does the proposal have clear objectives and outlined impacts with measurable outcomes? Does the proposal have a clear implementation strategy with detailed dissemination and outreach plan? Will the money be spent by the deadline? Some of this, is that our questionnaire? That's ours, or was that's ours?
That's the scoring.
That's the scoring. Yeah. All right, great.
So I guess just for like 1, 2, and
Yeah.
3, maybe just put how.
How?
Question mark.
Yep.
And I guess, yeah, I'd like their input on how much more so than my own.
Okay, so I can work with Tyler
Thank you.
on how we change the phrasing to ask in proposal. And Jenny, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the word how is probably the way to ask the question. But
Yeah.
for question number 2, one thing I'm concerned about there is, well, how do you answer that question if you don't actually have any metrics on demographics of the people who you serve, or if you don't really know? So I think we need another way to also ask that question. I don't have the answer to this, but I'm just making a point.
Question number 2.
Yeah, for question 2.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't know the demographics of everybody they serve, there's got to be a different way of asking that question.
Any ideas, folks? I mean,
That's like an open comment.
Yeah.
I don't have the language to solve it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how to solve it either, but I that's sort of what I was trying to get at with the how and with the explain.
Yeah. You could say either provide demographics or give us a narrative. Organizations know who they're trying to serve, certainly.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good idea. Tyler, your hand's up.
So I was, at some point during this meeting, I was going to propose several changes to the application. I think one of the questions I was going to ask overlaps with this a little bit already, because Treasury is already asking what the targeted population is. If it's general public, folks that are like 50% below like the area, like the poverty line.
AMI, yeah.
Or like, is this in a QCT? So I think some of the recommendations to change the application would capture this, but I agree. I think it also probably serves us best to have the applicant actually provide a narrative as well.
I think so. And I mean, I wouldn't be opposed, frankly, to just really making these kind of 1 or 2, narrowing this down to even 1 or 2 questions that just evaluates their narrative, right? Did the applicant provide substantial information to answer this question in the grant, right?
Say that
Um,
last part again, I'm sorry.
So instead of asking, these questions are very specifically worded, but instead changing the whole approach and saying, look, in the grant application, you need to answer this question. And when we evaluate the grant as the committee, our question to answer is, was this question sufficiently answered by the applicant?
Okay,
Right? And so it's a little bit of a yes, no, or maybe we scale it, you know, really well. You know, we could do a Likert scale, answered thoroughly, didn't answer, and then all the stuff in between. Of course, there's going to be some subjectivity here. We can't do this without some subjectivity. It's impossible. But if we do a 5-point Likert scale and then, you know, they get a 3 because they did a pretty good job, but they could have done better, that might be, I think, a better way to approach this. How are people feeling about that?
Does that get at the heart of the issue? I mean, they could answer the question well, and the answer could be, no, we don't.
No, right.
At all. We hate those people. It's a thorough answer, but it's not what we want, you know?
Right. So that's a really good point. So we would have to phrase the question, you know, was it sufficiently answered, and are they reaching our target population?
Yeah, is it a good answer, basically, is what we're asking.
Right.
you're
Is it a
asking
good
Phil.
answer?
Yeah. is it a
Right.
good
I
answer?
can, and I think we can figure out that phrasing, keeping
Yeah.
that really excellent point in mind.
Yeah.
Would that be, but you guys are going to be, I mean, obviously me as well, but we're going to be using this. Will that be more helpful than how it is now?
I think it would be more helpful for me.
but wait
Jenny
a
and
minute.
Arthur. Yeah,
Yeah, this is.
go ahead, Arthur.
I
Wait,
was-
hang on, Mike,
No,
hang on, because Arthur was
No,
about
no,
to
no,
talk.
go ahead. Let Mike go. Go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay.
I was
go
gonna
ahead,
say,
Mike.
this is, you know, new to me. This is the first time I've participated, so I don't really have a perspective, except that I think it's good.
Thank you. Go ahead, Arthur.
But we're dealing with, like, I don't expect, let's say, town government to address that question, as opposed to, you know, some community-based group. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I don't expect you know, we funded the local nurse. Didn't we provide funds to have them buy a new car or something along those lines?
yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's not a question that would be applicable to that individual, or, you know, to town government.
so I hear you, Arthur, but I don't know that I agree. I mean, I think that department can say, hey, this person, you know, job is to do outreach to these vulnerable folks in our community. And the Department of Public Health at town government has a mission to serve the community of Brookline. I don't think it has to be a long answer necessarily, but I do think they can answer it. All right, I'm going to stop because Tyler, Brian, and then Melissa might disagree with me. So Tyler, go ahead. I might agree with you. So let's see what they have to say.
So we're running into this just a little bit on the staff scoring sheet. 2 thoughts I have to this is, the first, you can also pose it as not necessarily the organization, but the organization or proposal itself, and try to shift it towards, maybe is it more of a project specific thing that it's addressing. The other piece is just, maybe there are certain questions that do not apply to a nonprofit versus a town departmental submission. That's one thing right now we have. I think there's one question on there that we're going to consider adjusting on ours. So it would just affect like the redistribution of points. So it'd just be like, do not answer if town department submittal. So that's two ways you could address that.
All right, thank you, Brian.
So I guess I'm a little uncomfortable hearing what you just said, Tyler, because I kind of like the idea of having one scale and one metric for everybody. But I'm open, but I want to hear a little more about that. And I guess Arthur, to your point, I agree. And that's why I'm proposing we have to. I want the proposer to explain how they help reach out to low income folks, DEI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Instead of me judging if they do or not, I want them and everyone who applies to answer the same question in the same way, how they do it. So I guess I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at. So if a town department, for instance, said, you know, we need the public nurse needs a car because she needs to go drive around and help folks, and that explains what kind of folks they are or whatever, that would be more helpful to me than just a yes, no.
Okay,
So I don't know. Hope that helps.
Yeah, Jenny, go ahead.
Maybe Melissa first.
Well, I think it also just depends.
Oh,
Oh, you just
Melissa, you-
muted in the middle of that.
I think it depends on the category that's being applied for as well. If you're applying under pandemic response, that's one thing. And you then kind of some of those measurements that we need to report on through Treasury are needed. But if you're applying for the provision of government services, then the population you're serving kind of broadens as well. So it really could be, I think it depends on what category you're trying to go for.
Well, I'm sorry, Miriam. I guess I thought we were going to try to focus more on low income people of color in this round in general. And that's where I'm trying to come from. If that's incorrect, tell me now and I'll stop asking questions.
No, I think that, I mean, at least for me, the same, but also I think that, and I could be convinced otherwise too, Brian, but my initial instinct is to have one uniform scoring sheet for everybody. So, but Jenny had something to say, and then Tyler's thinking about it, so he's gonna have to chime in. I can see his thinking faces on. Go ahead, Jenny.
I mean, I'm also, if Tyler wants to finish up his point again, but I'm like collecting. I have now, the list is growing for me, so I will wait also. Tyler, you want to keep it?
No, he didn't actually raise his hand. I just.
Oh, he just has that face.
Yeah,
Got
he
it.
just has that
it's
face.
just, I have resting thinking face quite a bit.
Resting thinking face.
Resting thinking face. I
Yes.
like that.
Oh
That's
my
good.
God, that might be actually what goes on the hoodie now.
I better get one.
I'm writing it down. Of
All right.
course.
Okay. I'm thinking about this a lot now. So maybe it's not how do you serve. Maybe it's just provide us with the demographics of the people you serve from the past, like say 3 years. What is the, who does your organization typically serve? And they should have that information. Most organizations should have that information, because I don't know, I'm just concerned that we're going to get the same checkbox kind of answer, and it's not going to be very meaningful. Maybe we just ask them, what are the demographics of the population you typically serve?
absolutely.
Just something very open. And I think that that's what any foundation does anyway, just thinking about it from like a program type of point of view. The other thing I think is that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
We would ask that on the grant application.
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Exactly.
yeah.
I think the other thing is we should be very clear about these priorities, that we'd be willing to fund different types of community activities, as long as, of course, they're in the spirit of what ARPA is supposed to do. But we should really emphasize that this is a priority, if it is indeed. I believe it is. But then we should say, we need to require them to report on the measurements, which I know that we're doing, but we might need to add a level of rigor to that. And I'm not sure if Tyler, Melissa, you're already doing that, but that would be helpful in terms of measuring the impact, so to speak, like on who's being served. I don't know what your, Tyler, your resting thinking face. I can't read it.
Listen, I think on the town's end, we address some equity measures, but for the most part, we leave more of that to the committee with scoring. We do still have certain things where we're not necessarily talking about impact, but there's like innovation, sustainable public benefit, but we use some more generalized language on our end.
I
So,
think we should be specific. That would be my preference, especially if you're leaving it to the committee. I would prefer specifics.
so I think what would be, here's what I'm hearing, and then, oh, go ahead, Chaz, you go, and then I'll.
Well, I think, you know, you could also frame it in terms of outcome-based metrics again, which I know the federal government loves and has repeatedly refers to in its the metrics that it wants from us. You could ask on this, you know, what, you know, not just, you know, what does the program intend, but what is the desired outcome of what is the measurable outcome of the program or policy that you're asking the money for? And then as a subset of that, what is the population being served by that? Can you give specific demographic information, be as specific as possible? What outcome, what percentage or number of people served belonging to an underrepresented or underserved demographic would you view as successful? And what will you do to ensure that success? Questions like that focused on outcomes might be able to get you where you need to go.
And how will you know? Yeah. Okay, so here's what I am hearing, and please, oh, Arthur, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, Miriam, I'll go right behind you.
Okay, so here's what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is actually the scoring sheet needs to reflect the grant application better. And the real problem is what we're asking in the, not problem, but the real issue is what we're asking in the grant application. And so it sounds to me like what Tyler and I and Mike need to do is revamp the grant application and then make the scoring sheet reflect, did they answer the questions we were asking in the grant application? And did they give us the answers that we're looking for in terms of how that grant would in fact address the needs and the mission and the population, et cetera. Does that seem, did that make sense what I just said? Because I realize it's a little convoluted.
Yes, and I actually, prior to this meeting, I did actually start to draft some of the changes to the application.
Great.
And something Chaz already mentioned is one thing I did include is having a field for a measurable outcome narrative, which could serve this case, could also serve the case that we've run into recently with the public benefit test. So I think that's a good Swiss Army knife question. And we could build out the language on that specific question, but I do want to have outcomes included because that was not included last time. And some people gave it and some people did not.
So I see your hand up, Arthur. I see your hand up, Brian, but I'm just going to recap then what I said, which is Mike and Tyler and I with Melissa and Chaz, we're going to take a stab to revamp the grant application. And then I would say put aside all of these questions. We will do a new scoring sheet based on what we're asking in the grant application. Now I'm going to ask one thing. When we send you the draft, please look at it and give us input. All right, Arthur, go ahead. And
Yeah, I just want to go back to a statement that that Brian made 3 minutes ago. Are we specifically pointing to a group that we're going to focus on before? In other words, are we saying that the vulnerable population, Black, brown, people of color are getting preferential or priority consideration?
The answer, in my opinion, and everyone can disagree with me, but the answer is yes. That for this round specifically, and we can put this at the top of the grant application, which says, grants that focus specifically on vulnerable populations as defined by X, Y, and Z will be given priority consideration.
Okay, so my only concern is that, and I raised this the last time, I think it's one thing to say that we're going to prioritize the population versus the group that, am I making sense?
Yes, you are. In fact,
I was gonna say the
it's an
same thing.
excellent point. It's an
Yeah.
excellent point, and we should absolutely, Tyler, we should make sure the language says not just these populations, but organizations, we'll figure out the wording, but yes, that these organizations who are owned and operated by, and also focus on these populations. That,
But and even going down to whether or not these organizations have a diverse staff.
Yeah.
Okay, and let me just say, in conclusion, so I've been doing just a little bit of research. Okay, it's amazing that some of the surrounding communities, like Cambridge, okay, and another group, I'm going to use Cambridge as an example. $80 million was distributed, okay, in ARPA money, and almost none of it went to diverse ownership or when I, you know what I mean? The organizations, white organizations, were speaking for and paying attention to, okay, Black and brown clients, but they were not themselves diverse. Does
Yeah.
that? Okay.
100%, Arthur.
Okay.
And I will say something else, which I think it's important for us as a committee to hear and for participants to know. Very, very few communities had any kind of community engagement process when it came to the ARPA funds. And I will be very frank, I think it's been, in Tyler and Melissa, but I think it's been a real challenge for us because nobody really thought about doing it the way we did it and pushing this money out to community organizations, and Tyler and Melissa and Joe Callahan and everybody behind the scenes here had to really work around a system that didn't support this kind of community engagement and community funding. So I do want to shout out to Tyler and Melissa and Joe for making all of that happen. But for those waiting on MOUs, we had to work around a lot of systems that were actually meant to keep us from getting this money into the hands of community organizations. But yes, Arthur, yes to everything you said. Yes.
And let me just add.
And then I'm going to let Brian talk. But yes, go ahead.
I don't mean to be a curmudgeon, but that's the system of the country.
You are not a curmudgeon, and we agree.
Do you understand what I'm saying? That okay,
Yes.
the country is designed that way, and we have to go. Let's go against the grain. Okay.
100%.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm gonna. Chaz, do you need to go before Brian, or can Brian speak? Brian, go ahead.
Just on all of that, I agree with revamping it, and thank you. That's a big job. Let's just run everything through the legal department to make sure that we are phrasing everything in ways that are applicable. I know, Arthur, you want to go against the grain, and so do I, but I don't want to go to jail. And I don't want to have this whole thing thrown out because it's, we use the wrong language. And I guess I just want to also agree with what Chaz said 5 or 10 minutes ago about outcomes. I think it's important for the applicants to show what they have done and who they have served, but also speak to in the application process, and this is, I guess, a request for you, Miriam, what the proposed outcomes will be with the money and how will they know? And do they have funds set aside in their application to do the measuring and the metrics and the reporting that is required? Thanks.
Got it. Thank you, Chaz.
Follow up on both Arthur and Brian's comments on this. Joe is not here, but were he here, I think he would put his hand up, and I want us all to be aware of this framework that we are dealing with, this pernicious framework, is going to be a tough one. And one of the things that I would encourage the committee to think through is think through the lens of how ARPA is drafted and what ARPA views as acceptable uses, and then try and utilize that framework to reach your desired outcome. For example, what ARPA really talks about is impacted and disproportionately impacted groups that have been impacted or disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. And in my last job, actually, I got a direct question from someone who asked, can we say that Black business owners are disproportionately impacted? They were impacted disproportionately by the pandemic, even in relation to other business owners. And the caution we got from that was, while we are talking about that within that disproportionate impact framework, and that is helpful on ARPA, you then have that that backstop of civil rights law that it can be used against its intended purpose to prevent you from utilizing that classification. So I think it is very important to think through in determining who are your impacted and disproportionately impacted classes, how you define that, and building that out in such a way that it is defensible, reaches the population you want it to reach without causing an overflow, and reaches the right result, which is ensuring that historically marginalized communities, which have been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, are actually able to get the assistance that they need. So it's going to be a number of hoops to jump through, and I would just encourage this committee to think carefully about that structure. One of the takeaways that we got from that question about Black business owners was, generally speaking, exclusivity might get you in trouble, but priority tends, because of that disproportionate, as long as you can identify that disproportionate impact, less so. But again, that's not me in my hat as lawyer. That's me in my hat as someone as someone who overheard that conversation in another context. Whereas I would want town council to assess that risk and allow this committee to think through the tolerance for that risk based on the structure you're developing. So my request to you and the broader group is, let's think creatively and within the language that ARPA gives us about how we want to achieve our desired results.
Thank you, Chaz. Okay, I'm mindful of the time. We have 13 minutes left. I just want to quickly, so I think the number one action item will be for us to revamp the grant application and the scoring sheet. Tyler, do you want to take a first stab at it? Do you have the bandwidth to take a first stab at it?
Well, if it's ARPA related, yes, absolutely.
Okay, it is
Are
ARPA.
we referring to the Are we referring to the committee sheet specifically?
I'm referring to the grant application specifically.
Oh,
if you take a first, which you've already started editing, it sounds like, but based on the conversations today, if you want to take a first stab based on what we've just talked about, or and then Mike and I can look at it. And then I think probably in terms of the scoring sheet, I should probably take a first stab at that, but not until I have the new application. Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yep.
All right, because we're on to action items now. So the first action item will be based on today's conversation. Tyler is going to revamp the grant application for us to look at. And then I will revamp the scoring sheet. And then Mike, can I assign you an action item to draft the email to all of the current MOU recipients, emphasizing our concern that they're reaching the intended target population?
Yeah.
Great. Great. I'm looking at the action items from last time. Tyler to send out draft MOUs. He's done that. Tyler to post dates of opening and closing of the grant on the website. He's done that. Miriam and ARPA Academy to continue to edit phase 2 process. We're doing that. Miriam and Mike to draft the email. Mike is going to do that. All right, great. So we didn't talk about site visits. I don't think we're kind of out of time because I want to make sure we have some time for public comment, but we will, what I want to do is see if we can get a meeting on the books for December. It'll give us an end time to make sure we have a new scoring sheet and a new grant application, and we'll send it out in the interim so y'all can look at it and make comments, and then we can finalize and agree on it in a December meeting. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Great.
Wait, what date?
Oh, I haven't picked a date yet.
Oh, sorry. I thought you, I
That's
thought you said a date.
So, where is it? Why is that? Okay, sorry. I would say either the 9th or the 16th. Oh, 9th seems too soon though. How's December 16th work for everybody?
Looks good.
Who said that? Sorry.
I would have to do a little bit later that day. Actually,
Would 3 o'clock work?
Like 3 would be better for me that day than 2.
3 o'clock, December 16th work for other people? Mike
Yep.
is saying yes. Brian, is that a yes from you? Arthur, that's a yes from you. Tyler, yes. Melissa, does that work for you? Chaz, I just don't know why. And your name is actually written in the box in front of me.
I know, it's fine. It says Charles, that's why. I'm fine. Yeah, I can make that work.
All right, great. Super. So everybody put on your calendar.
Yeah,
I will
yeah.
get oops, I think I just accidentally sent an invite to everybody and to the whole wrong group.
I just sent out a calendar invite
Yeah.
that day.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's probably better. All right. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to implore you again, when we send around the draft, please look at it and give us edits at that time so that when we meet on December 16th, we can finalize the grant application and we can finalize the scoring sheet. On that note, yes, Jenny.
Well, will we revisit the site visit conversation on that at the next meeting
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. So
Yeah, I think that'll be, yeah, great.
I could think a motion to adjourn as well.
Well, first, we
okay.
have 9 minutes because I want to have, we need to make sure that we have public comment. So I'm going to open up. We have 13 folks in attendance joining us today. Thank you very much. And, and I would like to, if you would like to speak, you can either raise your hand or put it in the Q&A. And if not, then I'm gonna, we'll give everybody about a minute. And if not, then I will take Jenny's motion to adjourn and give you 7 minutes back to your Friday.
right.
So I don't see anybody.
We have a
Right?
hand.
Oh, we
We have
do. All right.
So
Oh, Deborah Brown.
I will promote you to speak. And then Ade will be next.
Great, thank you. And if you could all keep it to just 2 minutes, please.
Hi, my name's Deborah Brown. I am the board president for the Brookline Community Development Corporation, formerly Brookline Improvement Coalition. I appreciate a lot of the comments today. I'm a believer in outcome measures, but outcome measures can be very tricky for new organizations. And you may achieve an unintended consequence, which is basically stifling or ending some of these concerns. So I think that as you think about the outcome measures, there has to be a gradation in them. Otherwise, you're not going to get your intended goal. So that's one piece. The other piece is that when I read ARPA, it talks about people who were disproportionately impacted by COVID. And I don't think we can lose sight of that. And I know cases like Corson, that's a civil rights case that people always throw up and say we can't do anything. And I think that we have to be willing to say BS. This thing about somebody's going to sue us, sometimes it's okay to say, bring it on. Bring it on. Because we may find ourselves there. And I think if we really want to help people disproportionately impacted and give some organizations the seed money to develop, we're going to have to be a little creative, and we're going to have to, I guess, in some ways be curious about what can happen. So thank you. Good meeting.
Thank you, Deborah. And I just put that note on my notes for the meeting about the outcome measures, because I think you're right. We want to be careful that we're not inadvertently excluding an organization by making a demand that they can't meet. So we'll have to think very carefully about how we word that. Thank you. Anyone else, Tyler?
Ade lowered his hand. I don't know if that was on purpose. Oh, there he goes. All right. Oh, I promoted the wrong person. It's like jumping around with me. It keeps lowering.
I think he lowered his hand. Did he not?
He raised
Yeah,
it, lowered it again. All right, good. All right, I caught it this time. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, we got you.
We'll find out if we.
Ade, you'll have 2 minutes once you start speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try to keep it short. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. First, Ade Janussi, Brookline resident, Black and Brown director. I would like to thank this committee. Miriam alluded to a point. Believe it or not, we looked around the nation compared to other places. This committee did a hell of a great job. We know it's not easy, but we do definitely commend you guys that we have as a community, we have a leg up in relative to other communities and how they handle that. So appreciate all of you guys. And Miriam, you especially, thank you for sending Carlos our way. We'll make sure that dream comes true. A couple of points. BCF, if you guys, the committee could help them out with the round one, we have a partnership with them, and it's going to benefit a lot of vulnerable families. Christmas is coming directly 100%. So any assistance we can do to help families, we'll appreciate you guys in fastening the process, whatever you guys can do to help them. Then I do agree with Jennifer in terms of the point of organizations knowing the demographics they serve. If you do the work, you should know you're reaching out to. That shouldn't be hard. We know who we serve. Other organizations should. And I do agree with Chaz on the measurable outcome, because APA is designed based on that. Who are you helping? It's not about exclusion. It's about what organization is going to do the work to make sure that we meet that requirement and not get ourselves in trouble. At the same time, helping the people really in need. That is the objective. So we should keep that. I hope this committee can keep that in mind. So I do agree with Charles on that, but Brian mentioned the point about organizations showing what they've done. Ato alluded to that too. Minority organizations in America, believe it or not, we don't get a fair shot. So it's going to be hard improving. Let's just keep that in mind too. But I do believe if you know the work
can you
of
wrap
your
up,
work,
Ade? Thank you.
sorry. So, and then the last point I wanted to make in terms of our diverse organization for the board, I hope you guys just keep in mind that organizations shouldn't start suddenly making their board diverse because they want to get up from Brookline. Let's keep that to in mind. What it has been before round two and these guidelines were put out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Ade. I think that's a really good point. I don't think they'd have time between now and then to diversify their board just for the ARPA funds. I've seen it happen, but I think we're not giving them enough turnaround. So I guess that's a good thing about changing the grant application and criteria in November for January grant. But actually, at the same time, if they're getting a more diverse board, then I'm okay with that too. Go ahead, Arthur. It looks like you have something to say.
We have, I'm sorry, we do have one more hand.
Go ahead,
Oh, go ahead.
Alex Leibowitz.
Yes, hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time for public comment.
Alex, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Miriam. I think the conversation today was really informative and a great conversation, and really helped those of us who haven't been as immersed in this stuff follow the process that we're going through. I really think the points about targeting aid and where this money goes are really well taken, and definitely something difficult to consider. I did want to highlight just one program that I've seen being adopted in 2 at least now other jurisdictions. One is in Cook County, Illinois. The other is now the city of Toledo, which I believe also partnered with their county. And that is seeding some of their ARPA money into a program to eliminate medical debt of residents. I think this in many ways exemplifies what direct aid to individuals and residents might look like, in the sense that it's targeted to those who are disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, who are more likely to have taken on medical debt, but also B, along socioeconomic lines that are determinative of, worse health outcomes. So, medical debt disproportionately, we know, accrues to those with chronic illnesses, people in lower income households, minorities in the United States. So, I think there are a lot of programs out there that may not come in through a bid only system, that are very innovative, can stretch our ARPA dollars a long way, and can actually deliver targeted aid to communities in need. I'm wondering, is there any flexibility in our system that we've set up to pursue maybe proactively those types of programs that would require us to reach out to a potential nonprofit and set up? In this case, I believe there's a national nonprofit called RIP Medical Debt, which would be unlikely to submit a bid to Brookline, but potentially might be willing to work with us if we reached out proactively. So I'm wondering, is there any space for that kind of activity through this committee, or are we locked into this bid only system? Thanks.
That's for you. So first, I was in fact going to say, I just chatted all of the hosts and panelists. I think one of the hosts has to chat it out to everybody else. The link to RIP Medical Debt, I give to them every year. And I think I'm gonna have to, I don't know the answer to that question. If I had to guess, it would be very hard for us to do that. I also think the problem is that we really need, this money needs to go and stay, it needs to stay in Brookline. And I think that we would, I think that would be very problematic, but I don't know. Chaz, do you have any thoughts, Tyler?
It would really be a question of the order of magnitude, right? It's difficult for me to say off the top of my head, based on, it would definitely be, that would be a project where we're talking about, 6-7 figures from our resources that could be used for many smaller projects, and it would be a question of on the community, on this committee and the broader community, as to whether or not that's feasible. It's funny, I don't mean to continue talking about my old job, but that Cook County and Toledo are both clients of my old firm, so I know the team that helped develop that program, and so if that is of interest, I can always reach out to them and talk to them about how it works in practice. But the reality of that situation is, I think it would depend on what group kind of moved it here. If this was, say, a priority of the public health department, if this came from an indication on staff side, it might look a certain way. If it came from a coalition of the public who were able to, for example, reach out to RIP Medical Debt or another organization, partner with them, kind of do that legwork in advance, that would have an impact as well. I mean, ultimately, the question is, right, with the limited resources you have, do you want to go big with a couple of small projects, or do you want to go wide or tall with a couple of small projects, or do you want to go wide with a couple of with many smaller projects?
Mike, your hand is up, and then I'm mindful it's 3:03.
Yeah, I'll just say we just had a bit of a tug of war with regard to the community benefits question with regard to scholarships.
Public benefits
Brookline.
test.
Public benefits. And I think we'd have a problem with grants to go to individuals, or even to an organization that gives grants to individuals. And it's worth looking at. There's clearly a need, but we also don't want to get in our own way.
Right.
So-
And I would say this, thank you, Mike. I think that's a good point. I would say this, the role of this committee is to evaluate the grants that are brought to us. And I think it's really beyond our scope to go out looking for ways to spend this money. It's a great idea, Alec. If you want to do some of the work and potentially submit a proposal, we would be able to evaluate it. But I cannot put it on this committee to do that. It's just out of our scope. And frankly, we're already, I think, pushed in terms of bandwidth to do what it is that's within our scope. And there was something else I was going to say, and now I don't remember what it is, but that's okay. So I do agree with, I think we all agree with you. It's a really precious, again, I donate every year. It's a very important issue, but and if you bring us something, we'll definitely be happy to evaluate it. Anything else by any committee members before we adjourn? Great, thank you all. Now I have a hoodie saying and something for the back of the hoodie, and and I will see you all December 16th. Thank you very much, everybody.